Hey everybody, how you doing? I'm Eric Worrell, and and Andrew, you don't know I was going to do this. This is episode
Oh,
25. Episode
that's
25 of
exciting.
Ask a Property Manager. You got on there, Andrew. I think so, right?
That's awesome. Let me zoom in here.
Did I not put your
Yep.
name on there? I don't know. I thought I did. Sorry.
It's hard to tell. The script, my video clip of you is about the size of a thumbnail, so it's tough to see. But
Well, this is episode 25. I'm going to actually get right into this. And our first question, I'm going to pull up the agenda here. And Andrew, you submitted these for us, so thank you for doing that as
Mhm.
always. Let's see, we'll hide our names here. So we're talking about issues with transferring utilities to tenants. So
Okay.
I'm going to read this to you. Let's see if I can refresh it here. You know what? Yes. Let's see here. It's doing the funny thing where it's cutting out my screen. So I'll pull this up. But we talked about this before, Andrew, with
Mhm.
transferring utilities with tenants and like how you can set up a landlord account with your utilities and you can get an easy transfer. But we had
Right.
an issue that was popping up in the group, and this came from Whitney. And she said, this is what she said. She said, how do you all ensure a tenant transfers utilities into their name upon move-in? How do you
Mhm.
handle it if they don't? So her unique situation is that she has a tenant who moved in a week before Thanksgiving and she got a disconnection notice in my name. I spoke to the
Mhm.
tenant and they ensured they'd take care of it and still hasn't. We are in Illinois and they won't shut it off for non-payment in the winter. So they're just racking up a bill. I'm assuming she's talking about the heat bill. And she's
Mhm.
wondering if they can evict on this basis. It's in the lease. They're responsible for utilities and she's, fed up and her gut instinct was that these folks were going to be trouble in the beginning.
Mhm.
So what would you tell Whitney on this one?
So the easiest way to deal with this situation is to call the utility company the morning of the move-in and make sure that the utilities are on in the tenant's name. Um, Obviously, we're already past that point. These tenants are already moved in. It doesn't sound like she's going to get them to come out and turn off the utility. So
Yeah.
I guess at this point, the best option is to double check your lease and see if you have the ability to back bill that to the tenant. I know that when we did our revisions on our lease for this year, we had in our lease that tenants are responsible for the utilities for the entire duration of the lease. But
Mhm.
one thing we did not have that we added this year was that ability to back bill a utility to the tenant in the event that they don't turn it on in their name or it reverts back to our name sometime during the tenancy for whatever reason.
Yeah.
It just kind of covers your bases that way.
Do you know what the lingo was on that you used when you added that to the lease?
I don't remember. It was pretty basic, to be honest with you. It was something along the lines of landlord reserves the right to bill tenant for any utilities used by the tenant during the course of their lease term, or something along those. Very basic. It wasn't complicated.
Okay. So in Whitney's situation, let's say she doesn't have those stipulations written into the lease. What would you do at this point if you have a tenant who's racking up a heat bill because they're not switching over the utilities? And a lot of these northern states, they won't shut off the heat because,
Right.
you want to freeze somebody. What would you do?
If it's in her lease that they are responsible for the utilities, which I believe she said that it is, send them a notice to correct or quit. Um, Different in different states, depends on the state you're in, how long you have to give them to correct the lease violation. But that's what I would do. Tell them they need to correct the lease violation, and if they don't correct the lease violation, chances are you're going to be looking at an eviction scenario, because these guys are she said right from the beginning she had an uneasy feeling. It sounds like that might be the road that they're headed down, but I
Mhm.
would try to resolve it first. Do the official notice the way you're supposed to, and then if they still decide that they don't want to deal with it, then you might be looking at an eviction.
Okay. I think that covers that. So let's move on to the next question. This one, let's see, we're dealing. Hold on one second here. I'm going to show this on screen. And you might not be able to see this. I'm using my first emoji in one of these on screen
I can see it
graphics.
actually, yeah.
So this person is dealing with tenants who smoke, and it's an owner occupied building. Sounds like it's at least a 3 unit.
Hmm.
So I'm going to read this. This comes from a new member of the Rent Prep for Landlords Facebook group. And what she said is she needs help ASAP, please. She has tenants who are smokers on the first and second floors, and she's told them verbally in the nicest way possible how their smoking is affecting my health, but they are
Hmm.
still smoking in the apartments, mostly during the nights. Now it's
Hmm.
gotten to a point where I wake up in the middle of the night, clutching at my throat, unable to breathe with an apartment full of smoking smells. My mouth is
Hmm.
bitter due to the cigarette smoking inhalation. I'm
Hmm.
at my wit's end. I don't know what to do.
Okay. Did it say that she has a no smoking clause in her lease, or did she not mention that?
She did not mention that.
Okay. First thing I would do, check your lease, see if there's a no smoking clause in there. Chances are there probably is. If there's not, check your local municipality laws. I know here in the city of Buffalo, they actually have a law written into the local statute that you're not allowed to smoke inside of a multifamily property.
So
Generally,
regardless
go
of
ahead.
what the lease says, if
Mhm.
in Buffalo, you cannot smoke inside of the unit.
That's technically the law. It's
Okay.
it's widely disregarded by just about everybody,
Sure.
but technically that is the law. So going back to the first point, if it's in the lease, same situation as with question one. Send them a lease violation notice. Give them X number of days to correct, and if they don't correct the situation, tell them they need to move because their
Yep.
lifestyle does not. Number one, smoke is damaging your property. It's your
Mhm.
asset on the line. Number two, it's damaging you. It's damaging your lungs via the secondhand smoke, and you don't have to live with that situation. If somebody's not going to respect the rules of your household, they need to move along. Whether it be an
What?
eviction or tell them, look, you've got to move, or if they're on month to month or whatever,
Yeah.
do it legally, obviously, but make sure that you enforce the rules the way they're written.
Yeah. What's your opinion if it's not addressed in the lease, but this is becoming an issue for an owner occupied situation? I mean, how would you handle that?
hmm If it's not in the lease, but it is an owner-occupied situation, when they come up for lease renewal, I would probably not renew them.
Mhm.
If they're on a month-to-month, I would just 30-day them and tell them, look, unfortunately, your lifestyle, my lifestyle don't coincide. You've got to go.
Yep. Yeah, that's pretty simple.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move to the third question of the day, final question on episode 25 of Ask a Property Manager. And this one, a lot of people are dealing with this, especially because we've had an unusual amount of cold weather in the South. And we're
hmm
talking about dealing with frozen pipes on a rental. So
hmm
this question comes from Bella. So it's actually two parts. She says, yikes, I got two questions. After finding out from my tenant this morning that the pipes burst under the house due to our freeze here in Texas and they have no water. So first part is I have in the lease that the tenant is responsible for up to $200 in repair per incident, and I take over after that. For those of
hmm
you who have similar wording, how is that best settled up in terms of money? And then we'll read the second part here and we can revisit. Second part is anyone else have any idea how to protect pipes under a pier and beam house? So let's start with the
hmm
first question here. She's got these frozen pipes, but she has a stipulation in her lease that tenants are responsible for the first
hmm
$200 in repairs. How would you handle this situation?
This doesn't sound to me like something that should be a tenant responsible item. Can you hear me still?
Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
This doesn't sound like something that should be a tenant responsible item to me. Tenants don't control the weather. It's just not something that a tenant has within their powers is to manipulate the forces of nature.
Yeah.
Um, is there something the tenant could have done? Yeah, they could have left water running, just a little bit of a trickle through the faucets in the shower and stuff like that to keep water moving.
Mhm.
Moving water, as a rule, doesn't freeze.
Yeah.
But it's also Texas. That's not necessarily knowledge that somebody from Texas would have versus somebody from Buffalo would have.
Mhm.
I wouldn't necessarily think that the tenant should be charged that $200. It's just tenants don't control nature. It's one of those fluke things that happens. It's part of landlording. I don't think the tenant should be responsible for a deductible on this.
Okay. And then moving to the second question, do you
hmm
have any ideas on how to protect pipes? And it says it's under a pier and beam house. Do you have any input on that?
So what we've done in the past, because we have a few in Buffalo, it's very common to have like a two-story duplex in the front with a little cottage house in the back, usually a single-family cottage house in the back. Generally speaking, those cottage houses are they don't have a basement. They're in the same situation, the pier style, like what you have here. What you can do is there's a few different things you can do. If it's a situation where you're not going to have long-term cold weather, if you leave some water running, that'll generally be enough to prevent you from getting frozen pipes. If it's going to be a long-term thing like what you have here in Buffalo, they sell different grades of basically what's called a heat tape that you would wrap around the pipe,
Mhm.
and it plugs into an electrical outlet, just a standard outlet. What it does is it basically heats the outside of the pipe, which prevents the pipe from freezing essentially. And they make different grades of it. They make like a very cheap grade that you can get at Home Depot. If you go to a plumbing supply house, which is what I would recommend doing in this instance, they make a little bit nicer tape that doesn't feel quite as flimsy, doesn't it's just a little bit better quality product. And when you're talking about live electric near water,
Mhm.
I would always err on the side of caution and go with a little bit higher quality product.
Yeah.
Once you have your heat tape on there, and check the directions on your heat tape, by the way, to see what they recommend. But different heat tapes will be able to withstand different types of insulation. Sometimes you can get that black, like the black pipe wrap,
Yep.
or the, whatever color pipe wrap it would be. Sometimes that's sufficient. You can put that around the heat tape and kind of duct tape everything so it's nice and tight so that the air is not getting. What you're trying to do is just prevent air from getting to that pipe. Once air gets to that pipe, it's going to freeze it. You could even take, once you have that pipe wrap on there, I've seen situations where we'll take pipe wrap and then we'll actually wrap the yellow, or not the yellow, the pink bat insulation around that and tape that all the way down, just so that you've got the entire pipe covered and encapsulated to prevent that cold air from getting to it.
And that pipe wrap, I mean, that stuff's pretty easy to install. I'm not like the handiest person in the world, but it's just like you got a pair of scissors and there's just like a little piece of tape that you can peel off, and then it just kind of seals around the pipe. Just make sure that you buy the right diameter size for whatever pipes you're trying to wrap. But
yeah, exactly.
Cheap, I mean,
it's not terrible. It's a little bit more expensive. It's a little more expensive if you get the commercial grade stuff. But like I said, in a situation where you're going to have live electric next to water under your dwelling, I would always err on the side of caution and get the little bit higher quality stuff. Mm-hmm. It's worth it to just know that you have that protection there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, after this video, because I'm curious, I'm not familiar with the heat tape. I'll research that and drop some into the comments too if people want to take a look at that. So,
perfect.
Cool. Well, thank you for your time, Andrew. And as always, an associate broker with Realty Edge. Make sure we get that in there.
Oh, yeah, good call.
But yeah, thanks for doing these episodes. Like we said, this is episode 25, so it's cool. We're keeping it going. And if people have questions, you can always ask in the Rent Prep group. Tag Andrew, tag me. We'll try and use these questions and keep this thing going.
Absolutely.
All right. Hopefully you have a warm day and you don't get too cold out there.
Oh, dude, I'm going right back into the office after this. It's too cold to be outside today.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Take